Good afternoon. So session after the lunch, and not to make you fall asleep straight after, we are starting with what I call the fun talk. What I'm trying to advocate here is that we've seen images of OCTs and imaging of OCT angiography, and it's fantastic if you have every tool. But if you don't have every tool, if you only have a reflectance image, that can still get you very far, provided that you know the technology and you know what you're looking at. So just a reminder of how the different wavelengths penetrate into the layers of the retina. And and obviously the infrared is the one that has the deepest penetration. And when we get a reflectance image, that is the result of the interaction of the light that is sent in and the light that is reflected out, minus the light that is absorbed by the ocular structures. So you always have to remember what interacts with what. And so the blue and green light, as you can see, interact quite a lot with the ocular structure. They're absorbed by the lens, by macular pigment, by oxygenized hemoglobin and melanin, whereas the infrared is virtually not interacting with anything except water, pretty much. It's also important to always remember when you're looking at an infrared image, or any image really, is remind yourself what wavelength is used to acquire that image. Because, for example, the Optos, so the wide field, has a 633 nanometers source. So it's not the same infrared image as the Heidelberg. So when we're talking about multicolor images, we basically are looking at a confocal false color image that is reconstructed by the summation of the infrared image, the blue reflectance image, and the green reflectance image. And the most different thing, the biggest difference between a classical fundus, a standard fundus camera, and a multicolor is in the aspect of the optic nerve. In this particular case, the optic nerve looks white, simply because yellowish, simply because it's a very excavated nerve. Otherwise, it would look darker. If you bear in mind what is the wavelength, where is the wavelength going, you can identify what is the optimal contrast that what each structure will be seen with optimal contrast with which wavelength. And the interesting fact about the multicolor image is that you basically have all the information in one image. So you can just really play around with this. And I'm just going to now give you examples of this. So in blue reflectance, you can you can appreciate better the fascicular defects rather than in the blue reflectance. And when we look at macular pigment, we can, because the blue light is absorbed by the macular pigment, it's actually visualized here in the blue reflectance light. Whereas if you want to see, macular pigment, you will look at the blue reflectance light. If you want to see the details of the anatomy, you will look at the green reflectance light. But this is a confocal image, so geographic atrophy shows up really, really well with a good correspondence with the autofluorescence images. And again, too fast. And the other major difference that you have between a standard color image and this multicolor false color image is in the aspect of the pigment. This is the picture of a nevus, and it shows white because the reflectance from the infrared, from the melanin, it's predominant. But if you look at the picture on the green reflectance and blue reflectance, there is absolutely nothing. You can visualize epiretinal membranes in a fantastic way with the anatomical insertion. It's a very useful preoperative tool because you can really appreciate the anatomical reports. You can visualize fluid very well. And fluid shows up, obviously you can see the demarcation of the fluid, but interestingly, the aspect of the fluid is bluish-greenish. And the reason is the one that I said at the beginning, meaning that because the infrared light gets absorbed by water, what you're left with when there is water is basically the blue and green light. And so the blue and green component shows up much better. You can use this as a tool, for example, to follow up. In this image, you can see this blue-greenish blue-greenish area here, which corresponds to the presence of intraretinal fluid, and this is the follow-up, where there's no intraretinal fluid. This is a case of cilioretinal artery occlusion complicating a branch retinal vein occlusion. The ischemic area shows up really nicely, and with the corresponding OCT images. You can appreciate, for example, in a case of central retinal vein occlusion, you can really see nicely the vascular tortuosity, the hemorrhages at different levels, and the cotton wool spots. This is a blow-up of a different case of a branch retinal vein occlusion where you can see that the hemorrhages really follow the RNFL, route. This is again the case I showed before about, of panuveitis with periphlebitis evident here, and the papillitis that shows on the multicolor. On the follow-up, the papillitis is gone, and even the periphlebitis is significantly reduced. This is a case of a traumatic macular hole, and obviously this is a big macular hole. And this is another case of a macular hole where you do have this area of hyperreflectance in the center, and I would like you to also appreciate the flame hemorrhage next to the disc. That's because this guy has many blessings, obviously. This is the reason of this. There is some tissue spared there, so it reflects and it shows on the multicolor. This is a case of retinal detachment. You can really see the margin of the detachment, and if you go in the periphery, you can even appreciate the hole that is there, that has originated the problem, with a corresponding OCT. And this is a case this is an interesting one because it shows, if you look at the half part and the bottom part, they do not have the same reflectance. And the reason being that there is a schisis in this patient. But if you really look carefully, all the information is really there already. So you see that there is the two parts of the retina are not exactly in the same plane. So overall, the multicolor is a versatile imaging modality. It is quick, non-invasive. It can be mydriatic, non-mydriatic, and it can still get you very, very far if you know what you're looking at. Thank you very much.